It's not a tumor. Yeah, this week we're doing 1990s. There's no other number there. Ivan Reitman's Schwarzenegger classic, Kindergarten Cop, a film that, I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't crazy about when I was younger, but has turned into one of the most enjoyable rewatches we've done in this podcast, because it turns out Kindergarten Cop is absolutely fantastic. And I really mean that, like, genuinely a really good film. And above all else, like, is this one of the best Arnold Schwarzenegger performances ever? I know that sounds like hyperbole, but I think it's that good. I'm not sure if he's ever been better than he is in Kindergarten Cop.
Well, it probably goes to the fact that he said this is his favourite film he's ever done. So he's enjoyed doing it, and you can tell that he's enjoyed doing it. Mm-hmm. It's because it's a change of pace, isn't it? You start off with his action role at the beginning, but then and do you know what? If he kept his cop version of John Kimball, that would be a different film in its own right. Do you know what I mean? Like kind of along the lines of like Cobra or something like that. But then as it moves on and it becomes, well, actually, you can say it becomes Kindergarten Cop. You watch these films like, what was it? Vin Diesel's The Pacifier, The Rock's
Tooth Fairy,
things like that. Oh, The Game Plan, I think, was another Rock film.
Tell Mum or I'll shoot her off the train. That's definitely wrong. I've got all the words in the wrong place. I've got all the words, but definitely in the wrong order then. Being the one I mean.
You always say that they are Kindergarten Cop-esque films where the action star is now doing his Kindergarten Cop. But this is the original of it. And he is having so much fun in this film. He is enjoying... And it's really weird because we did the Commando episode a couple of weeks back where I said it was really creepy with Alyssa Milano. The way he interacted with her. I don't find him creepy at all in this. I find him lovable. I find him just having a great time with the kids.
Well, that is the difference, is like you can see how much he's improved as an actor in the, 5 years since Commando, or 6 years? Whatever it is. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Commando was 88.
Commando wasn't 88, was it?
Yeah.
Commando, there's no way Commando was 88.
You keep talking and I will prove you wrong in a sec.
I mean, if it is, I've got it. Surely Commando's earlier than 88. It has to be earlier than 88. I'm probably wrong. It's going to be 88.
Nope, you're right. But you're actually not right. What did you say? What did you say, the 8 years?
I thought it was like 84, 85. I thought 85.
It's 85.
It is, thank God for that. When you said 88, I was like, he was doing this like the same year as Predator. I was like, he looks different for a start.
Excuse me while I stop this recording so we can start again, so I don't look...
No, it's too late for that. I already fucked up the start anyway. That's just part of the podcast charm, should we say. But yeah, he's come on leaps and bounds since Commando as an actor. And I think you really see this as... And it's one of those things, I think, in particular, Arnold Schwarzenegger is totally underrated as a comedic actor. And, you think back to his, I've got like his 4 big comedy films in mind, like from earlier-ish in his career. And his Twins, which was also directed by Ivan Reitman, Kindergarten Cop, Junior, and Jingle All the Way. Now, I would argue the fact that Twins is the only stone cold classic out of those, although I might be changing my mind on Kindergarten Cop. But the one thing they've all got in common is that they're all genuinely beloved. Like, I don't think that's an outrageous thing to say. Like Jingle All the Way, which is probably the weakest of those. Well, actually, Junior's pretty
I'd probably put Junior as the weakest.
Junior is pretty bad. But even something like Jingle All the Way isn't a great film.
No.
But people love it. And Arnie is great in it. And that's a big part of it. And, usually when I'm talking about Arnie on screen, because I made it clear a million times, I'm a massive Arnie fan. I grew up with his films. And a big part of that is his screen presence. It's like, he might not have been the best actor in the world. You can't, it's like speed. You can't train speed. You can't train screen presence. You've either got it or you don't. And Arnie has got it in abundance. But as a comedic actor, I think he's genuinely good. And part of it is that goddamn face of it. It's like everything he says is when he does the shut up, you only have to like look at his face. It's contorted in this cartoonish grimace. And, all the way through, I'm like, man, he's like really nailing the comedic moments. And it goes back to that earlier film, Twins. It's not just, funny, look, Arnie, he's a lot bigger than Danny DeVito. He's genuinely good now. He's got comedic chops for sure.
You mentioned Jingle All the Way. And the good thing about Jingle All the Way is that seems to be his first foray as well into like physical comedy. Because he does a lot of falling over or, just crashing through things and things like that.
More hijinks, I suppose.
Yeah, things he doesn't usually do. Because in this film, it's like you say, it's more his face. I mean, at certain points, his face looks rubber. Like
it really does.
It's been altered to match what he's screaming or shouting or anything like that.
Before, I had a picture on my wall, and it was just an array. It was like they were drawings, but they were obviously like quite realistic. And it was just like an array of Arnie's faces. And as soon as you saw them, you can almost pick out the scene. In fairness, a lot of them are from like Total Recall. You know, that's another film where it's not funny, but he's very much, his face is doing a lot of work in Total Recall. You know, you think of Arnie, and you know, I think people obviously associate him with the Terminator, this totally stoic character which shows no emotion. But you go to a film like Kindergarten Cop, man, he's showing a lot of emotion. And sure, it's exaggerated, but it suits in the same way that his stoic, almost robot-like features suit the Terminator. His outrageously overblown features actually really suit comedy as well.
Can we say as well that this film fits perfectly his one-liner style? Like, his one-liners in this film are fantastic.
Yeah, they really are. And this film, I think you said before, this film's so well. Cool.
I mean, he had a case where he did 2 rapid fire in the party scene. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to do the Arnold, because the only time I ever
sound... Come on, do it. Do it now. Come on.
The only time I ever sound good doing an Arnold impression, I say sound good, don't sound terrible, is you've already done it. It's not a tumor.
Oh, that's the best one.
Yeah,
that's the best one.
No, so in the party scene where he's shooting up, he's destroying it, and he's like...
That sounds like a different movie. Yeah. In the party scene when he's shooting up, I was like, wait a minute, do we see different films?
In the party scene where he is unloading his shotgun into speakers.
Cool. Yeah.
And he's party's over. Next time, my house. And who are you? I'm the party pooper. Like, just two lines, and it's
again, they're cheesy, aren't they?
And it goes down so well. But he's
and that is the thing. Like, at the start of this film, he really is playing to type. You know, the kind of the grumpy cop, and he totally looks cool as John Kimball at the start as the cop. Like, you know, he's again another mall with tons of mall cops. By the way, we'll get to those. But everyone else in the mall is looking very bang on, early 90s, late 80s, whatever. And he's walking around, of course, he's got the sunglasses. I'm like, he looks cool. Like, he just looks badass. Well, and it's only later on, there's another scene. And I was like, oh, he looks cool with like the beard and stuff. I like the look. But I'm not sure if later on they had to redo a shot. But I think it's back in the police station when he looks like he's got pubes glued to his face. Yeah. I don't know what happens to the beard, but at some point they've obviously had to replace it, and it doesn't look as good.
You said the look. I mean, he's wearing what looks like a Flash's Mac. Let's be fair.
Yeah. But I think he just about gets away with it.
You said late 80s, early 90s. No more so than Crispin, who we'll get to the fact that he is the world's worst villain, because it's just, I don't find him threatening at all.
I find him creepy.
Oh, mate.
He's just creepy as fuck.
It's a different, he looks creepy, but it's not creepy in a threatening way. We'll get to
No. It's just creepy in a creepy way.
The shoulder pads in that bloody Miami Vice suit he's wearing.
There's that, but the bit that really stands out is the ponytail.
Like, the ponytail. And I don't know whether he's fake tanned up or he's sort of tanned or anything. And obviously, when you say creepy as well, the creepy interactions he has with his mother. But
the fact that he calls him, right, you're a creep as soon as you call your mum mother.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're in kind of like...
when you're constantly kissing your mother every time you see her.
Well, that's the weird thing about this film. And, you know, it'll come up again in the end of the film, which feels like it is legitimately from a different film. Like, the start of the film feels like it's from a different film, but it kind of works because it's like, oh, look, it's Arnie. You know, he's a badass. And then, in fact, like, let's be clear, this film does the quickest turnaround from asshole to nice guy in maybe in movie history. Usually, you know, it takes a while. Like, for the first 10, 15 minutes, he's a douchebag. Basically, as soon as he's in the car with, is it O'Hara?
Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as he's in the car with Phoebe O'Hara and he shows her ferret, he's like a nice guy immediately. Like, there's no transition from tough cop to adorable kindergarten teacher. It's like he goes from I'm an asshole, and then he shows her the ferret. You're like, oh, ferret. And then all of a sudden, he's like the nicest guy in the world. And because that shift is so abrupt and you're so on board so early in the film with him being the kindergarten cop, or let's be clear, for most of the film, just a kindergarten teacher, that when you get the ending, which is surprisingly violent, it feels out of place.
Yeah.
And also, as you said, Crispin and his weird relationship with his mum, the fact that he's not a traditional bad guy, the fact that he's just weird and a creep, like, it just feels out of place with this movie. I'm not even sure why his mum is in this film, other than to make him more creepy. And although I will say, I do love the bad guy with the ponytail look. Like, you know, this really does take me back to the late 80s, early 90s, when bad guys, they'd either have South African accents or they'd have ponytails. And I feel like, you know, that is due a return of things.
It's mad that they're meant to be drug dealers, but you don't see any part of their drug operation or anything like that. It's really weird. But also, this film should have ended after the first 10 minutes because Kimball would have been fired for handcuffing a witness to a dead body.
Yeah, that's a pretty dark. I was like, when he did it, I was like, man, that is dark as fuck. Yeah. Like, he's got to go on the assumption that they know each other. That could be like boyfriend and girlfriend, husband. Imagine that's your wife.
But she's over his body. Killed. She's over his body crying. Yeah, she's crying. This guy has just died. Her boyfriend is dead, and he's literally said, "Don't move. I'll be right," or whatever he says, and he handcuffs her to a dead body.
Yeah, that's some pretty.
He would have been fired so fast.
Yeah, but that is the thing.
When it comes to the 80s or 90s films as well, I love the fact that they offer him the role of the kindergarten teacher. Like, he's got no teaching qualifications, nothing like that. And then they go, "Oh, by the way, you're a good kindergarten teacher. We'll offer you a role full time." Like, that's
the thing. I guess because as far as they're concerned, at the start, don't they think that he does have experience because? It's supposed to be Phoebe O'Hara is supposed to be taking the role, and he's supposed to be providing backup. Yeah, like that's the general. But then she gets so sick she can't do it, so he comes in, and it's a little bit of a stretch. But again, they throw you in so quickly into the deep end in terms of like, oh well, it's just really the story is about how he deals with the kids. That you just kind of forget about the kind of mechanics behind it or whether this makes any sense.
Well, no.
And in fairness, like,
I can't really forget about the mechanics. I do question.
No, you can't forget about the mechanics. Wait, this doesn't fit the narrative quite right. And the thing is, the start of that film does actually remind me of when I did teaching in China. Because, of course, the whole thing is with Phoebe O'Hara is like, she's supposed to be teaching the next day. It's supposed to be her first day on the job. And then she gets super sick. And the same thing happened to me. I was doing this teaching course in China. And it was the next day we were doing our full first off, like we were teaching the kids, like a proper classroom. Excuse me. And I was teaching basically kindergarten kids as well. And they're like, you can't be sick. We expect you to be here for every lesson, blah, blah, blah. And the night before, I ate chicken lung and got aggressively sick. Like, I think the sickest I've ever been. Like, and I was like Phoebe, although Phoebe, whenever she's not sick, she's always eating, which is very Brad Pitt-esque almost. Yeah. I quite like that. But I was in that same position where I was so sick. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be teaching a class of kids the next day. And luckily, I didn't have an Arnold Schwarzenegger to step in for me, which was a bit of a shame. That would have been ideal. But that feeling of like, I'm that sick and I'm like, I'm supposed to be teaching goddamn kids tomorrow and I don't know what the hell I'm doing is absolutely horrifying. Luckily, I was able to do it. Although, again, from personal experience, you see this in the film, and obviously Arnie in his first lesson, when he loses the class and eventually ends up like, shut up, I've seen that happen. I think one of the teachers describes it as, what is it? Oh, no, I've lost the bloody quote now. About the kids being an ocean, about kindergarten really is like an ocean. You can't turn your back on it.
Yeah.
That is so true because when I first taught kindergarten, like those younger kids, that is the whole lesson thing. You think, I'm doing a lesson plan. It's just keeping control of them. And while I just about managed it, I saw what happened to a teacher because you had to, the other thing, part of it, sorry, long story, was that you...
Really?
Is that you observe classes. Other people, and this one woman was doing a kindergarten class and she lost control of the class, and it legitimately looks like this film where you're watching this fucking car crash happen in front of you. Like, she can't control the kids and they're running around in and out of the classroom, they're playing piano and stuff, and she's just standing in the middle, and she didn't do an Arnie, but it's like, dude, this is what happens when you lose a classroom of kindergarten kids. It's just the worst, man. Unbelievable.
Let's talk about the kids for a start. Did you recognize the girls have a penis, girls have a vagina, boys have a penis kid?
Oh, what's his name? No, I didn't. Is he famous? I know his dad's a gynecologist.
Well, I say he's famous. He's He was the autistic boy Simon in the Bruce Willis Mercury Rising film.
Oh yeah. No,
and he was also the kid who was kidnapped by Freddy Krueger in Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Do you know, I remember liking that film, but I can't remember shit about it. Just the premise. So yeah, fair enough.
So, but he's still acting up to now. So he's doing all right. Like maybe not recognizable roles, but he's doing all right. And
isn't like the main one, like the girl who like she was in Cloverfield and stuff like that. She's one of the girls in this.
She was the what girl was she? I'm not a policeman. I'm a princess.
Yeah. No.
I'm not a policeman. I'm a princess.
That's not the girl who went on to become.
I thought that was her. Una Lawrence, wasn't it? I thought that was her.
No. It's Jesus Christ! I've got the notes, but they're all over the place here. Where the fuck did I write it down? Wait. Oh no, it's Adette Annabelle.
I thought that was her.
She played Rosa. She's got darker hair. You're thinking of like the little blonde-haired girl.
The one who was dancing around, yeah.
Yeah, I think we've got it mixed up. It doesn't matter. One of the kids went on to be the girl from Cloverfield anyway.
Okay, no, yeah. The one I'm thinking of was Sarah Rose Carr, who was in Beethoven, Father of the Bride.
Yeah, Beethoven. Yeah. That's the one.
And she's not acting now. She's done. But I just because that's like arguing with a little kid is like that with her, where she stands her ground. You stand your ground. So she kind of gives in, but kids are never going to give in, mate.
No, and it is interesting, like, he takes that almost police school approach, doesn't he? Like, he becomes, like, he's the cop or the sheriff kind of thing, and they're his deputies. And it was actually one of the reasons that they were supposed to show this movie in Oregon, like on an open screen cinema last year. And it actually got removed. Because with everything going on with the cops and stuff, they just said, they didn't like the idea of kids being taught by a policeman, like treating them like his sheriffs and stuff like that. Yeah. So they actually banned the screening. And I'm like, dude, it's just one of those things. Like, I feel like you're kind of missing the point. I mean, maybe it's a bit right wing. I have no idea. When I saw this film, I was like, maybe kids need more of this. That discipline in school, perhaps, you can make the argument they're a bit too young, but I was like, I don't know. However you see the film, I don't think you need to remove it from the playlist of any screen, especially in Oregon, where it's obviously beloved there,
Other political views are available, just FYI.
I don't know, man. I'm just like, kindergarten cop, I don't think it needs to be part of the narrative of, police control or stuff in America.
I mean, if you start going down that route, it's not worth it, because just watch the film for what the film's about. It's just
it's a silly fun, and not only that, it's super charming. That is the main thing about this film. It's not like laugh. The main thing about this film is that it's really sweet. Like, his performance is really sweet. And that is the thing with Arnie is, I think we mentioned in a previous podcast, the fact that kind of like The Rock and stuff like that, you never see them in relationships, and they're never really the object of desire because they're almost too big and it can become weird. But in this, he totally is. Like, he shows up at the school, he's got his tight polo shirt. All the women are losing their fucking minds over Arnie in this film. And, he looks great in this film. There's no two ways about it.
And again, when you mention kids, a typical kid version as well is, Mr. Kimball, are you married? No. Mom, he's single.
Yeah. Well, that is the, like, part of this film shtick is that everybody wants to get with Arnie.
Yeah.
And that it's like, all right, that's one thing, because, he shows up, he's got, the fucking arms, the physique, he looks the part. But the next step is really having him in a convincing relationship. And his relationship with Joyce is actually quite, I buy into it.
It's like, charming. It's nice.
It's not overly sexy. In fairness, it kind of falls to pieces when they kiss. Like, the kiss scene just does feel a little bit awkward. But again, like you said, like, to where he was in 1985, when he just looked weird on screen with a kid, let alone a female, a grown-up female. It's like, in this, he's great with the kids. I buy him in that relationship. And to be honest, I haven't bought him in many relationships since then. So that it comes back to the idea that, like, this really is one of his better performances, like, across the board.
It does kind of hint further down the line he's going to end up with family troubles, though, when his long-lost son probably shows up and says, you started a new family without me?
Yeah. That's all kind of swept under the rug, isn't it? Yeah. I guess it's to give him a little bit of depth, I suppose.
But basically, my ex-wife doesn't want me having anything to do with a kid and things like that. And
is it Lowell, the kid? He's probably like one of the things, and I think it's the reason he actually specifically asked for Ivan Reitman to direct this. Oh, obviously the fact that they had history of doing twins together and that was a big hit. Was that, I'm not sure true or not, that he had a history of working well with children on screen. And, they say in movies, it's like, the two things you don't want to work with is kids and specifically animals. And they do both in this. It's like there's a fucking ferret on set for some reason. I'm still not quite sure why it's a ferret rather than a puppy or something. But as good as Arnie is, this film can fall down pretty quick if the kids aren't up to scratch or if the kids are inherently unlikable. But the kids are likable in this. Yeah. Like, Lowell with his like, everybody dies shtick. That's pretty good.
He's fantastic. The kid who's playing the beat up kid as well, the one who's going through domestic violence, he is fantastic in this. Zach, I think his name was.
Zach, yeah, he's really good.
And also,
again, that's some pretty dark stuff.
Yeah, but another reason that the film should have ended before it ended, Kimball would have been fired after punching the father in front of the whole school. But
I don't. But again, we say that there's like a 2021 kind of stance. This is 1990. He beats up the dad. The teacher sees it. And I think everyone knows, you get what they imply is that everyone knows that the dad's beating up the kid. So everyone's like, yeah, fuck that guy. Like, they know the dad's not going to press charge. But the dad would have pressed charges against him. No, he wouldn't have. He wouldn't have pressed charges because he knows if he presses charges against Arnold Schwarzenegger, what comes up is he's beating the shit out of his kids. So the dad doesn't have a leg to stand on. So everyone just looks at it and goes, well, he's not going to press charges because he's beating up his kid. Everyone's happy that Arnie put the fucking smackdown on him. So no harm, no foul. We just let it slide.
I'm really happy that he beat up a child abuser. Absolutely. Kicked the living shit out of him.
I just think he gets away with it.
Yeah, I don't know, see. But again, you might be right. I might be thinking 2021 head.
Yeah, I think it's a 2021 now. I think in 2021, say you're the dad, and everyone knows that you're the local asshole. I don't think he presses charges for getting his ass whipped because I think he knows where that goes. So I'm willing to and maybe I just want to believe it because you're just like, yeah, I want Arnie to beat the shit out of the guy who beats up his kid. Yeah. But yeah, he's great. Although there is one scene which, we're talking about the differences between 1990 and 2021. No scene encapsulates that better than the scene with Sylvester's mum, where she comes up to him, she's like, oh, I think my son's like playing with dolls. And she's like really concerned. Yeah. And he's like, oh, no, he's not playing with dolls. He's using the dolls to look up this girl's skirt. And she's like, oh, thank God. I thought my son was gay. Turns out he's just a sex pest. Oh, thank fuck. It's like that scene is never making it into a film in 2021. No. Let's be clear. That film is clearly saying being gay is really bad. Being a straight heterosexual sex pest, though, we're going to let that one slide. That one's pretty cool.
She has made a living, Kathy Moriarty as well. She has made a living on that gruff voice.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
She has been in so much stuff, but yeah, her voice is memorable. That is just
a woman with a bit of an edge kind of thing, quite sexy, that kind of shtick. But
like 20 cigarettes a day, kind of.
Oh, 100%. But yeah, so Arnie's great, the kids are great. And the third piece of the puzzle is Oregon is great. Astoria is fantastic. Obviously, when we think of Astoria, when we think of Oregon, we think of the Goonies. And this was actually shot just up the road from where the Goonies
well, that's in Flaxborough. I think it's like 1.3 miles away or something like that, they said.
Oh, really? It's that close, yeah?
It's that close, yeah.
But it's got that great, the Northwest of the United States, Washington State, all that stuff. Like, I grew up loving that stuff because of movies. And of course, that started with the Goonies. But, being Welshman as well, when we look on a place and it's constantly raining, there's a certain sense of home.
It makes you feel like home, yeah.
Yeah, but there's something, even, I actually think it's slightly underrated. The first Twilight film, don't get me wrong, they quickly went off. I think I watched the next two and I was like, all right, these are terrible. But the first Twilight film, I actually think is okay. And a part of that is the sense of place. Like, I think I was just charmed by the fact that they're clearly up in like the Northwest again. And I mean, you're laughing at me. I don't think the first Twilight film is that bad.
After I take my head out of my hand, I will say this is the last Hey You Guys podcast because I can't do anything with Liam anymore after he said that the first Twilight film isn't bad.
I honestly don't think it's that bad.
When I find out that a vampire sparkles like a diamond in the sunlight, I'm done.
There are problems. Like, don't get me wrong. This is based on expectations. Like, I went in, I was like, I'm going to fucking hate this, and I watched the first one, and I was like, all right, it's not great. It's not a great film.
I went in. So you actually went into the cinema to watch?
No. Right, okay. Well, I'm gonna get into this very briefly. I watched the first one on DVD, and I was like, this is fine. The second film, one of Bethan's friends, when we first moved up to Edinburgh, she wanted to go see the second film, and this is where it really fell off the cliff for me. And I was like, all right, these films are ridiculous. But I have never had a cinematic experience like it in my life. We were queuing outside the cinema, even though we had tickets, because it was like this big deal. And it was me, and I was like, as far as I could tell, I was the only dude. And because I had people at the front of the queue and I got there late, I had to walk past the majority of these girls to stand at the front of the queue. The looks I got for a start were absolutely appalling. Right? As soon as the doors opened, the girls didn't walk into the cinema then, even though they had tickets. They ran and screamed like a fucking Beatles concert. And the mood in the cinema was, I mean, it was like watching porn. But it was so weird, right? I was sitting next to, right? So I had the people I knew to the left of me, and then to the right of me, there was this girl, and she had popcorn on her lap, and she was, I can only describe the word giddy for the whole film. And the bit where, is it Jacob, the wolf boy?
I couldn't tell.
Oh, I'm asking you. I think it's Jacob. There's a bit where, for no apparent reason, basically Bella like puts a little finger or something, and he's like, "Oh, we've got to stop that bleeding." So he takes off his entire top. Like, this is where the film's going at this point. He takes off his top. The girl next to me, like, she nearly passed out. She's like, "Oh, oh!" Like, the popcorn went everywhere. I was like, "This is like a fucking cartoon." It was insane. I don't know. It was worth going just for the experience of the vibe in the cinema. I've never seen anything like it.
Aren't we the same age, me and you? Pretty much the same age.
Yeah, I'm a year older than you.
Yeah. Can we go back to the fact that you're like a 75-year-old man? It was like a Beatles concert.
Dude, you know what I mean? Like, we don't see that stuff anymore. Okay. Like I guess the most modern one, I'm not sure if that happens in the same. Maybe with BTS would be like a modern day example. But I think when we grew up, it was like New Kids on the Block, Take That, stuff like that. Or even people forget, there used to be those videos of boys and girls and Michael Jackson concerts of people passing out in the crowd and stuff before, started touching those children. But, I still think quintessentially when people think of a popular culture moment in time and just people losing their shit, I still think people think of the Beatles, right? Or am I just showing my age?
Next, you'll be telling me that you walked 15 miles in the snow to pick up the local newspaper.
Maybe I did. I'm definitely feeling my age. I didn't tell you that much.
Anyway, Kindergarten Cop.
Yes.
Moving back on.
That was a hell of a diversion, wasn't it? It was worth it. It
fucking
was
Oregon. And you ended up with a Twilight story.
Oregon. But yeah, Oregon's great.
Dominic, though. The kid Dominic. Mm-hmm. Could you tell that it was twins?
No, I had no idea until I did the research. Yeah, I mean, don't me wrong, he's like the worst kid, and there's two of them. He's like the most quintessentially 90s kid in the film.
Whichever twin pulls the face when he falls off that tower, and that's perfect acting.
That is perfect acting.
And it's hung on his backpack, and he's like, ah, ah.
Yeah, I know. Let's be clear, right? That's a weird scene. Because, right, that's nothing to do with Arnie, that's nothing to do with anything else. If there's not the luck that his backpack gets caught, he dies in that scene. He's trying to climb up, and
then the film's over because Crispin goes home.
Yeah, Crispin goes home, Arnie's very sad, whatever. And just to be clear, right, this is going to turn into a very brief story this time. That does happen. The whole people getting caught up on things. Like, I was with three friends, my friend Curly and my friend Sargon, right? He was like, I'm going to climb this big ass fence. And we're like, dude, like, it's hard. It's not even a shortcut. We're just going to walk around. Then we were like 11 at the time. And we walk around. So he's out of sight for, I'd say, 5 seconds. By the time we come round, he's literally hanging 6 feet off the floor, just like not whatever that kid's name is, but by his Bugs Bunny jumper. Yeah. Like, he jumped over, and the moment he's jumped, the top of the gate has caught his jumper, and it's just hung him in midair. And he was literally stuck. Like, if we didn't get him down, he would have had to wait for a stranger to get him down. He was just there, suspended in midair, 5-6 feet off the ground by his Bugs Bunny jumper. Yeah. So it does happen. Although, be it here, it just felt like a bit of luck that he didn't fall to his death.
That happened to us as well in high school. Between Rumney High and St. Iltyd's, you got an alley, you got a lane that connects the two schools on Newport Road. I'm saying this to people who are listening.
Yeah, I was going to say, everybody knows Cardiff geography as well as we do. It's fine.
But So it's two schools that basically share a lane. We knocked the football over into St. Illtyd. So my friend jumped the one fence, jumped the other fence, pushed himself up. As you just said with your friend then, slipped and just ended up with a spike going through his jumper. Just missed his head. Because St. Illtyd's school, their fence had the typical, again, 80s, 90s fence that just had the metal spikes.
Yeah, proper spikes.
Yeah. So he's hanging off the metal spikes, just dangling. Yeah, like a fairy on a tree. It's ridiculous.
It does happen, but it's a, like you say, it's a weird part of the film where it's like he could have very easily died there, and it's just usually you think, oh well, if a kid falls, then somebody catches them or something like that, or even like he almost slips, but then he kind of regains his composure. But here it's just like blind luck that he didn't fall to his death.
Can we mention as well that the lasers that he set up are basically proton packs?
Yeah, they totally are.
Well, directed by Ivan Reitman, who did Ghostbusters as well. But his laser is a backpack with a laser. Like, so it's basically a proton pack that he's done.
Yeah, well, that is, I think the fact that you mentioned the fact that he directed Ghostbusters, and I think that kind of half explains the tone of this film, because it does push back and forth. Like, this doesn't feel like a straight up family film all the way through. And I think Arnie actually blames the relative darkness and violence of the last 10 minutes on the comparably disappointing box office for this film. I think this film did okay, but I think he was expecting, it's like, well, it's Arnie in a comedy, it should make as much as Twins. And I think, he's of the mindset that 25 million difference between the two films was because people were put off by the violent ending. But if you look back to Twins, even like Twins has got again, there's a big drug deal. It's not a straight up kids film in the same way that this isn't. And you look at his back catalog. This is the guy who directed Ghostbusters, Evolution, a film I'll absolutely go to bat for. I actually quite like that film. Obviously, there's Junior and Twins, and he did Stripes as well. And all of these films, they're comedies, but they've all got an edge to them, and it's the same with this one.
Yeah,
and I think the film's actually better for it.
No more so than Stripes. With the edge, 100%. Because it's like within the Korean War at that point or something. No, the Korean War. Sorry, the Vietnam
War. Yeah. But they're basically training to be soldiers. But again, it's that same thing. Yeah, it's a comedy, but it's got a bit of an edge to it. Kind of thing. And the same with, I think we've said it before, the difference between Ghostbusters Ivan Reitman style and Ghostbusters the terrible remake was that it was in the tone. Like Ghostbusters, yeah, it's lighthearted, but it's not playing it in a comedy universe. It's like, I think we explained that most of the comedy comes through Bill Murray. Yeah. Everyone else, obviously Ray has his moments, but everyone's playing it pretty straight based. And it's got a kind of family comedic edge, but it works as, at the other end of the spectrum, it also works as like a drama, as a sci-fi, as whatever, a ghost story. Whereas the remake got it all wrong, totally misread it, and made a straight up comedy where everybody's playing for laughs. And it's the same here. For the most part, the film's either quite sweet or it can be quite dark. And it's only Arnie really being a fish out of water that turns it into a comedy, but it's not a straight up comedy film at all.
Well, you already said about the dark ending. A suggested ending would have made it darker, where Crispin's mother actually kills Kimball. And that was a suggested ending. So
you can't have Kimball's mum.
You're saying you can't kill Arnie, but can you imagine if that actually happened? That would actually, nobody would be expecting that.
Oh yeah, it would have been a shock ending.
That's what with the problem with a lot of films then, now, whatever, is because audiences don't like the dark ending or or the unexpected ending. It's got to get changed for pasted on happy ending. Two that I can think of, Dodgeball, because it was actually meant to end with Average Joe's losing, but the test audience didn't like it, so then they had to put in the sudden death scene and have White Goodman lose. And then the other one is that Tom Cruise film, Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Where the pasted on happy ending is that he kills spoiler alert, he kills the alien, but then he's able to go back in time one more time and repeat the day just to have him alive again. The logical ending of that is to kill Tom Cruise. I mean, just kill Tom Cruise. But not a fan of Tom Cruise.
Jesus Christ, man. I mean, we won't get started on why Tom Cruise is just the fucking best. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. But no, I totally agree.
Of that film is to just have him die underwater once he blows up the alien.
Yeah, that the thing is that's different in my mind because that like thematically doesn't make sense. Like that film, as much as I love Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow, whatever you want to call it, it should end exactly how you said. Like he kills the alien, he dies, he saves the world, and that is the end. And it doesn't make sense for him to get one more playback and everything's fine. Whereas in something like this, it's like you don't need him to die. You don't need, like, narratively speaking, you don't need Kimball to die.
And the happy ending, and the fact he gets the girl. He's now going to be a teacher. He's going to be happy. I get all that.
It needs it, this film, though, because like, it gets so.
How would you feel? How unexpected would it be to go? Oh, Kimball saved everyone, but motherfucker's dead right now.
Dude, I think it would have been a terrible ending. I don't get me wrong. For shock value, you're all sitting there in the cinema like, wait, what the fuck? The mum who like is completely pointless to this film shows up and just shoots John Kimball like right between the eyes. Bang, one shot, dead. Credits. What the fuck is going on? Yes, it would have had an impact for sure. Is it the right ending for this film? Absolutely not. Because I mean, it's already surprisingly dark, and again, that whole argument, like, I'm not sure the mum needs to be in this at all. I'm not, like, I guess it's to try and explain why Crispin's so obsessed with getting his son back, because he's got this weird kind of familial relationship. It's like, he's obsessed with his mum, and so he's therefore obsessed with his kid. Maybe I'm willing to go with that. But Crispin is such, like, again, he's not a scary bad guy, but he is one of the creepiest bad guys in a mainstream movie I've seen in a long time.
How delusional is he? Like, in his mind, he's raised his kid. Like, when he was talking to Linda Hunt, the principal, who, by the way, I absolutely love. Linda Hunt.
She's great.
Yeah, she's fantastic. Great. But when he's talking to her, and she's like, oh, most 6-year-olds can't read. Mine can read. Mine can write. I taught him myself. Mine's a fantastic athlete. Like, mate, you haven't seen this kid since he was born, but in your mind, you've done all this with your, like, and I actually believe that he thinks he has raised his kid already. Like,
yeah, that is the thing. And he's got one of those faces. I forget the name of the actor off the top of my head. Richard Tyson, thank you. He's got a creepy looking face. He's got the creepy ponytail. He dresses like a creep. He's got the weird relationship with his mum. I'm totally willing to believe that he's out of his fucking mind and he thinks his kid's the best thing since sliced bread, and that he's got everything to do it. Even at the end, when he's like, look, we've got the same hands. It's like, what a fucking, because they clearly don't look anything alike. But it's okay because we've got the same hands.
When Dominic says, where's your helmet? He's like, can't fool my own boy. Like, what are you doing? Yeah, so after all that creepiness, the fact that he looks like, rather than let him go, because that is the thing, he is such a nutcase that you're like, you buy into the idea that he might shoot his own kid if he can't have his kid. It's pretty dark, and then the mum shows up. She does shoot Kimball, he does get shot twice, and he's got the Arnie face. It hurts so bad. It's like, after that, I'm actually on board with what is a relatively cheesy ending, and the music kicks in, and it's like, of course he becomes a kindergarten teacher, and everyone cheers, and happy days. But I think after that, I'm like, you need that sugary sweet ending. It's one of the few times I'm like, I needed that. I needed that reprieve from that weird ass character, because I really did find Crisp a creep, man. I didn't like him. I totally agree that it needed that ending, but I don't know. I'm kind of thinking I'd like to see how they would have done the other one and how I would have felt watching it. You're talking about.
I would love it. I would love it if there was, like on the DVD, Blu-ray, if there was an alt ending, and it was exactly what you said. The mum just shows up, shoots him, and it just goes Finn, and then credits. And you're like, whoa, dude.
So you're talking about Crispin. There's two things I want to mention. The first one being there's no cops in Oregon, because he basically assaults that dude for the race car.
Yeah, well, you know why, don't you?
In Main Street.
It's because they're all working at the mall.
Well, either all working at the mall, or they're all looking for the Goonies. But we'll talk about.
It's one of those two. This is another film where the malls are heavily policed, to say the least.
And the other one, although that mall was in America, by the way, those mall cops are in America, not a store. Yeah. America, fucking hell, not America. They were in California.
Yeah. And, California.
The other one, when it comes to Crispin, is the fact that he must be giving off a massive creepy vibe to everyone then, because Arnie spends the entire film telling people his ferret doesn't bite.
Yeah.
Only for it to turn around and take a chunk out of Crispin.
Yeah, well, the ferret just knows. Like, it's just, it's that well-behaved, the ferret. It never bites. But if somebody's about to kill a kid and has a ponytail, maybe you should train to like bite people with ponytails. I think that's a pretty safe bet. If you had a dog and you like it's super well behaved and you just taught it, listen, you can't bite. But if a dude has a ponytail, you can kind of bite. I reckon if the dog bit the guy with the ponytail, chances are he's a creep. I reckon in court, you're going to get away with it. You'd be like, dude, listen, my dog's a really good dog. He just bites guys with ponytails. They'd be like, all right, we'll let it go. We'll let it, kind of like in the same way that they let Kimball get away with punching the guy. I'm not saying that a guy having a ponytail is as bad as a man who beats up kids, but it's in the same ballpark. Well, that's what I'm saying.
The other ponytail guy from that kind of era is Steven Seagal, and he's a bad man.
He is a bad man, although if you set your dog on Steven Seagal, I'm guessing your dog's coming off second best. Like he's going to put one of those.
I don't know.
He's going to put one of those moves on him.
If you hear any of the stories about Seagal's actual martial arts ability, it's not it.
I've got it in my head that he hardly moves, and then all of a sudden, like he's just killed the dog, and it's like, oh shit, man! Steven Seagal killed my fucking dog, dude. Like that's a story. Like, right, you would be sad. Obviously, it's your beloved dog. But if your dog was to go anyway, I mean, getting killed by Steven Seagal, I mean, it's not bad. It's a story for sure. You'd be like, what happened to his dog? It's like, oh, dude, I trained my dog to attack guys with ponytails. And then was like, well, yeah, that makes sense. But he attacked Steven Seagal and Steven Seagal killed my dog. And I'm like, well, it was always unlikely, but it was the risk you took.
Yeah, I don't know. So. Because Seagal, like the stories and stuff about Seagal is the dog would actually fuck the Seagal up. But it's my turn to go off on a tangent now. Have you seen?
Yeah, go for it.
Have you seen any Steven Seagal films lately?
I was never a Steven Seagal fan.
That's absolutely fine. So if you look at like the late 80s, early 90s ones, you see it when Seagal fights, you see in all of Seagal. Right?
Oh, yeah. There's a big difference now. Yeah.
But yeah, so there's these random channels here in the UK, these like Movie 24 channels that love a Seagal film. And my God, if you watch anything after like 2010 onwards, maybe even earlier, there's perfect, and it's always the same thing with Seagal films now. The camera will show the fight. It'll go to Seagal's face. He'll do a couple of hand movements in front of his face.
Oh, yeah.
It then goes behind him. You've got a thinner, somebody with more hair kind of person, then doing spin kicks or at least lifting his legs. And in one film I saw, when it went back, it was an Asian stunt guy.
I mean, that's the quality of film he's... I mean, the equivalent of that is, back in the day, is, say, if you had, like, an actor and they needed him to play the guitar, like Rufus, we did Bill and Ted last week. There's right at the end of the film, he's like, do you mind if I jam with you guys? And it's clearly one of those, they get a guy who's amazing at guitar. So they show his hands playing the guitar, absolutely slaying. And then they don't pan the camera up. They cut to his face because, obviously, he can't play the guitar that well. And it's basically, that's his career now. He can't move, so they just show somebody moving, and then they cut to his face. And I think I watched a clip of, there's a film where he's in with Mike Tyson, and he fights Mike Tyson.
I sent you the clip. It's the...
it was from you.
Pharaoh's War, I think it's called.
It's rough. And it's not just the fact that, like you say, they're cutting between what his body can't do and his face. But he's making bad films now. They're poorly directed, so it makes it even worse. Like, you think of all the ways that, they, even with Arnie films and stuff, they would cut from like a stunt double to Arnie. And, the really good directors will, hide the cracks. It's really hard to notice when it's not Arnie, when it is Arnie. But of course, one thing, it's never Steven Seagal anymore. And two, these directors aren't good enough to hide the fucking breaks. So it just looks so bad. We've gone right across the board today.
Just to reiterate mine, Steven Seagal is a very bad man.
Oh, yeah, he is.
Yeah,
I mean, as I said,
very bad man.
It's strange because I was like a massive action movie fan growing up. So it was like Arnie, yes, Stallone, yes, Jean-Claude Van Damme, yes. But the ones I was never interested in were Steven Seagal and Chuck Norris. I just was never into their films. Chuck Norris in particular.
We missed the Chuck Norris boat as well, because Chuck Norris
I think so.
was mainly like Delta Force and Missing in Action, things like that were really early 80s and late 70s. So I think we missed the Chuck Norris boat.
I think we did.
Because the action films that we watched. But I'm with you. I mean, the only two Seagal films I actually liked were Under Siege and...
That's one of his best, isn't it?
Yeah, there was another one.
The one with...
Hard to Kill. I didn't mind Hard to Kill.
Yeah. I think most people, when they talk about his best films, they talk about those two. And is it Executive Decision? That was the one I went to see in the cinema.
with Kurt Russell and Oliver Platt. The best thing they ever did with that film was kill off Seagal.
Yeah. I mean, like in fairness, he's on the poster. He's dead within like 10 minutes.
Again, that's why going off on tangents. We are doing Kindergarten Cop, by the way. But going off on a tangent. The reason why they killed him off an Executive Decision, because we will never do an Executive Decision podcast.
Definitely not.
Was because he was a prick, and there was a scene at the beginning of the film where he actually physically assaulted John Leguizamo, because John Leguizamo made a joke. Seagal didn't like the joke, so physically assaulted him. So they're like, we got to get this fucking off the set.
That's bad news as well. Like, John Leguizamo is, I mean, he's got to be about 5'7", 5'8". He's a slight guy. And you think, like, Steven Seagal picking on him, it's like, come on, dude, don't be that guy. But hey-ho. But, I mean, I was just going to say, we've basically covered this film now. And I'm just, the only thing we've really missed is the famous... Who is your daddy and what does he do? It's like, how the fuck did we not mention that along the way? I mean, that whole sequence is pretty creepy, but it's a great scene in the film. But again, it's looking back at this film, the setting, the fact that Arnie's great, the fact that the love interest works, the fact that he's a creepy bad guy, the fact that he has great chemistry with Phoebe as well. Like, Phoebe's a great character. The fact that she just really goes for an Austrian accent. Obviously, it's one of the few films other than Escape Plan where you actually hear Arnie speaking his native tongue of German. But
also they're meant to be undercover, but she gets her fiance to drive down and bring her food.
Bring her food for sex.
Yeah.
That whole sequence I think is quite strange. But again, I'm glad she got more to do because she's quite heavily involved at the start of the film, and she could easily kind of drift off to the background. But the fact that they have that weird kind of triple date thing where she puts on she's like, I'm only in this. All I can assume is she's like, listen, I'm not in this film as much as I want to be. I'm going to go on a date scene with Arnie and his potential girlfriend. I'm going to do the accent. Like, really going to do the accent? Dude, I'm doing the accent. By the way, I'm just going to eat for the entire film. Well, other than the bit where I'm sick, I'm going to spend the rest of the film just eating. Like, she's got all these weird tics and moments, but it totally lands. It makes her what could have been a totally forgettable character really memorable.
Annie loved her doing the accent. They had so much fun with it, apparently. But you went to Who's Your Daddy and What Does He Do? What's your favourite What Does Your Daddy Do moment? Because mine was, my mum says my dad's a sex machine. Because I can imagine everyone just going, oh, what's going on there?
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, like the obvious ones, the kid who's obsessed with sex because his dad's a gynecologist. Was it boys have a penis, girls have a vagina? Thanks for the tip.
That's the one I remember. Second time in front of Phoebe, and she goes, "I see you've taught them the basics," and the kid just raises his arms in the air. I mean, he is a strange little kid, but he is good, man. Yeah, but the camera pans a little bit, and it makes him look like an extra from Willow. Like an actual dwarf. Like, he's only a little boy, but the way the camera pans up and it shows his little arms above his head.
No, there is something quite strange about it, and I don't want to get too, in case there is something genuinely wrong with him.
There's not.
Oh, well, there was a scene when you see all the kids together, and there's something about that kid where it's like, he's very small, clearly, and, it might not be for his age, because they could be different ages, of course. But he's a strange-looking kid, like, in a kind of, like, a charming way, in the same way that, what's his name? The kid from, like, Jerry Maguire was cute in a weird way. It just like, you see some kids, chances are he's not going to be a movie star in his 20s because he's just too odd looking, but he makes for a weird, cute kid in the here and now, as it were. Like, to my mind, the kid from Jerry Maguire hasn't starred in many movies since. Perhaps I'm wrong.
That kid is now a UFC fighter.
Is he really?
Yeah, well, not like amateur, but he is cut. Like, he still looks like the human head weighs 8 pounds kid.
Yeah.
Totally. His face is never going to change. But
yeah, well,
he was cut now, yeah.
Yeah, like those two kids, like they're the ones where you just go, oh, look, they're like the cute little kids, but you're like, you know, they're not going to be leading men 20 years later. But maybe I'm being.
But that little kid from Kindergarten Cop, he was also in Pet Sematary, Apollo 13, Spawn.
Spawn, oh Jesus Christ! We've covered so many films.
He was
Spawn's coming up now.
He was the homeless guy that makes the homeless kid, that makes friends with Spawn.
Yeah. I haven't seen Spawn. I actually had quite fond memories of Spawn.
Again, another John Leguizamo film.
Yeah, and I'm quite happy to leave my relatively happy memories of that film in the past, because I suspect if I went back and watched it now, it might be pretty rough. So I'm just going to not watch Spawn again and just be like, oh, I remember that film being okay.
Somebody who watched Spawn less than 2 years ago, keep it in the past.
Oh, fair enough. Well, although it can work different ways, because as I said, with this film in particular, when I grew up, Twins was my jam. That was our kind of Arnie comedy film in the house. Yeah. And I've seen Twins so many times. And it was the same with my brother. For some odd reason, we watched Kindergarten Cop, and we don't remember hating it or anything like that, but we're just like, oh, whatever. It just didn't click. It just wasn't one of my Arnie films. Like all these other films, Running Man, Commando, Predator, Twins, Terminator, T2. I've seen these films 1,000,001 times. I've seen Kindergarten Cop maybe once before, legitimately. So going back into this, I was like, this was at the behest of my wife, of course. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, I'm going to have to tell her I don't like Kindergarten Cop. But it turned into one of the most pleasant surprises. This is up there with going back and watching 48 Hours. Yeah. Obviously, a different kind of film, but Buckaroo Banzai, where I was like, God, what to expect? I really enjoyed this film. The
reason you like Twins might have been a different to the reason I like Twins, and that was for Kelly Preston, because she was hot in that film.
She was very, very hot. Yeah. That was a different thing. And at that age as well, when you're just becoming aware of girls and you suddenly run into this. Again, they do have a sex scene in that, don't they? But again, it's a different kind of Arnie performance where he's very much, it's a different fish out of water tale. Well, I think it works.
With Arnie and Twins, it's childlike wonder. And look, the way you've talked about Twins, we're obviously going to cover in this podcast at some point.
Yeah. We'll get to Kelly Preston and Twins.
But Kelly Preston's hot in that film.
Oh, she totally is. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the film. So, do you want to cover facts? That's usually your specialist subject.
Yeah, I can. I got a few facts I can cover. No problem whatsoever. So we already said that Schwarzenegger wanted Reitman to direct the film. Mm-hmm. So Arnold Schwarzenegger had a few conditions before accepting the role of John Kimball. He wanted Ivan Reitman to direct the film. He wanted a physical fitness theme. And he and Reitman wanted broken homes, child abuse, and family life written into the script.
Which they did pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, we've already said it's dark in those certain scenes, but it works well for the narrative.
Yeah, it adds weight to a film that could have been wishy-washy, and it's one of the problems, and I think it's something that is missed often I mean, you mentioned them earlier, the kind of other action heroes doing family films. Yeah. Is they think, oh, well, this just got to be funny and stuff like that. It's like, no, Arnie obviously went in with the idea that he wanted to make a film with some kind of dramatic impact, and I think he pulled that off.
So Ivan Reitman invented the 5 Reitman rules of filmmaking for the kids. Mm-hmm. Listen, act natural, know your character, don't look in the camera, and be disciplined. I mean, trying to tell 6 or 7-year-olds these long-ass rules, act natural. Well, they're going to be. They're kids. They're not.
But don't look into the camera.
Yeah. Be disciplined. Again, 6-year-olds.
Yeah, but again, that's part of the film as well, and why I actually think, okay, yeah, you can argue that he goes too far, but the fundamental ideas about how Arnie ends up teaching the class, I think are all pretty positive. It's about discipline. It's about, as you say, physical fitness. Obviously, like anything else, if you take it too far, these can become negatives. But fundamentally, they're positive ideals. And I think that, I see this film in nothing but a positive light in that regard.
So we've said Pamela Reed had a lot of fun imitating Arnold Schwarzenegger with her accent. Inside of an hour, he was calling her my little Pamela, and I was calling him my dear Arnold. So that was quite funny.
Awesome.
What else we got? They recruited local Astoria kids to be extras in the school. They were paid $35 a day. Mm-hmm. Arnold Schwarzenegger insisted on a gym being assembled while on location in Astoria. I kind of feel that wherever he went during that time, he wanted a gym. So
if The Rock, Arnie, a big part of their thing is their physique. You can't let it slide for a couple of months if you want to stay in that kind of shape. You've got to stay on it. So fair enough.
Ivan Reitman's favorite kindergartner was Sarah Rose Carr, we've already mentioned, who was the "I'm not a policeman, I'm a princess" girl.
Yeah, she's really good in it. He
quoted, "She marched to her own drummer. If she wants to stand, let her stand. If she wants to sit, let her sit." So basically, the thing she's doing in that film, she's just doing. So she ignored the 5 Reitman rules anyway.
Well, there's a bit when she's giving a speech, and you get the impression like that she wasn't given that speech. They're just letting her riff, and because she is so charming, and it actually. That whole thing about like when she's about to cry and Arnie just freaks out actually reminds me of like how I treat my wife. Like there's nothing scarier in my house than if my wife is about to cry and that Arnie approach where I start panicking. Like I can see it building up in her eyes. Like don't cry, don't, because once the waterworks start, you're fucking in for it. So no. Look at the bunny rabbit. Look at anything. Just don't cry. Jesus.
I'm glad you explained that there, because you went off with the way I treat my wife, like just shouting at my wife.
Yeah. I felt like that. I was like, wait, I'm going to have to follow through with this. I'm really going to have to explain myself. So all right, carry on. Jesus Christ, don't let me get myself in trouble anymore.
Ivan Reitman's son, Jason Reitman, who is actually directing Ghostbusters Afterlife, or directed Ghostbusters Afterlife, due to be released this year. He was actually the boy making out with the girl during the fire drill.
Yeah.
Astoria Elementary, the school in the movie, is just a few blocks from the Goonies house in Astoria. The measured out distance between the two is 1.6 miles, or less than 3 minutes. That's not bad,
Yeah.
While filming in Oregon, Arnold Schwarzenegger gave a surprise commencement speech at Astoria High School. Can you imagine? Just
so cool.
Schwarzenegger rocking up.
Cool. Well, they did that recently. Like they had like a reunion for all the kids. From Kindergarten Cop, and they're all on like Zoom meetings and stuff. And then, of course, just at the end, like they literally didn't know that Arnie was going to show up on the video call, and it's just like a nice. As I said, Arnie's just turned into an absolute hero as he's got older. He's such a nice guy. He's the nicest Republican in the world. There's no two ways about it.
So, people considered for John Kimball.
Yeah, some names:
Bill Murray, Patrick Swayze, Danny DeVito, and Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
But the reason why Danny DeVito wasn't hired? Stature.
I have no idea.
Stature.
I mean, the thing is, right, if he's not getting hired because of his stature, you don't need to get him on the list because you know that he's fucking tiny. Yeah. Like, maybe it's one of those things, like, you don't know until you see him next to the kindergarten kids, and you're like, dude, like, half of them are taller than Danny DeVito. This is ridiculous. But I guess, like, the fish out of water thing, it could look even more intense for him because he's the same height as them. Yeah. But Danny DeVito seems like a weird choice. Swayze and Murray, they make a bit more sense to me. Murray, obviously, with his links to Ivan Reitman for Stripes. But, you watch this film and it's hard to imagine anyone else but Arnie.
They're different films. If you get Murray in, it's more
very different
than it is. If you get Swayze in, it'll be geared more towards the romance with the wife. Not the wife, the ex and stuff. So
the fish out of water stuff isn't so inherently funny. Like part of the thing is with Arnie is like, they play up to it at the start when he walks in and they all look up to him and the camera's clearly a kid level and it pans up and he's like an absolute giant. That's part of the fun of it, isn't it? So I think it is an inherently different film for sure.
And I'm a little bit gutted with the next casting choice because I wasn't too enamored with him. So the role of Crisp, obviously, we've already said, was played by Richard Tyson. But this actor turned it down because he didn't want to be typecast. But I think he would have done really well in it, was Christian Slater.
Oh, that's great.
Christian Slater was considered for the role of Crisp after Ivan Reitman had seen him in Heathers, which, as I've already told you, I never watched as a kid, and I only watched a couple of weeks back. So Christian Slater, as much as I wasn't a huge fan of Heathers, Christian Slater was great in it. And I think he would have been fantastic as Crisp in this. And it would have given a whole new level to Crisp, I think, that you didn't get from Richard Tyson. Well, I do think he was the weakest part of this film.
Yeah, as I said, as much as I say, like, I like the tonal variances in this film, the fact that they're going for different themes, I do feel like the relationship with him and his mum and stuff, it feels like it's from a different film. That's my least favorite part of this film, undoubtedly. And as I said, to my mind, It's like, if you want to creep, you've got to creep. He's great at being a creep. I think he's too creepy. Like you say, at least with Christian Slater, if he's being a creep, it's still Christian Slater in the early 90s. Like, he's just inherently pretty cool. So maybe he's too cool. I don't know if it would work. But
it's not so much so cool as well. It's the way, because he can play subtle creepiness as well, and the way he moves and stuff like that. And I mean, you look at him in Heathers, the way he brings in Winona Ryder, and then it just turns out that he's a complete nutcase and psychopath. He does it so well. And I mean, True Romance, Cuffs, just his early 90s, late 80s work is fantastic.
It is. I'm actually thinking now of how bizarre this film would be if, like, you talk about, like, if you'd had Christian Slater as Crispin and then you'd had Jack Nicholson as John Kimball. Like, that would be too weird. It'd be too. And then you find out at the end that really is his long lost son, and he didn't realize it. It's like, oh my god, it would. Yeah, that film would be far, far too dark. I think if you cast both of those in the same film, the universe might explode. It might be one of those. I don't have the science to back it up, but it feels like it could do.
That was me for facts. So unless you've got anything on, we can move on. But
I've only got two. He actually filmed the famous trailer for T2 on his days off from this film, and a bizarre one. But ferret ownership was illegal in California, or has been illegal in California since the 1930s. The bill for ferrets to be illegal in California was due to be dropped in 2004, but was vetoed by Governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So despite his apparent love for ferrets, he's all I can assume is he had such a bad experience with the ferret in this film. When somebody mentioned that they were going to make ferrets legal in California, it's like, no, like, I'm stepping in. It seems weird for all of the laws to get vetoed by the governor of California. He's felt the need to step in on the ferret ownership one. It has to be down to this film. He has to have had a bad experience with that ferret.
They got away with the whole filming of it because it was filmed. Most of it was filmed in Astoria with the ferret and stuff. So that was,
except for like the actual scenes in the classroom are they're on sets, aren't they?
Yeah, but
yeah.
They're in LA, so.
So I think the ferrets. I don't. It doesn't matter. But so if that's it for the facts, next is soundtrack. I haven't actually got a huge amount, other than the fact that it's actually a very sweet soundtrack. It suits that tone of the film.
I think it's subtle as well. It's just it doesn't. It's not overpowering, so you don't really know it if you don't like.
No,
you can't really like. Because I can't remember the soundtrack, if I'm honest.
No, I think it's one of those ones, like, it captures the sense of place and tone without ever being, like, obtrusive. And it's only when I went back and listened to it, I was like, yeah, I do kind of remember it, but it just kind of, I think sometimes, you think of, like, Hans Zimmer scores and stuff like that. They become all-encompassing. They become a major part of the film. The other end of the spectrum is a film that is a soundtrack that just keeps the movie ticking along and keeps you on board with the tone, especially a film which, like, tonally, as we mentioned earlier, actually shifts quite a bit. It always kind of pushes it back towards the more light-hearted, sweet-natured end of the spectrum. And I think for all of those, Crispin and his mum and all these other things, and the fact that he's a cop, I think you do come away from, at the end of this film, of just thinking, well, that was just fundamentally a sweet, charming film. And I do think the soundtrack or score by Randy Edelman is part of that. And this is a guy with, quite a storied history. I think, Reitman's obviously a fan because he did Twins and Ghostbusters 2. Yeah. And then he has this really mixed IMDb of, like, he did Dragonheart, a film for my sins never seen, which apparently is really popular. Because when I checked out Randy Edelman on Spotify, they show you the most popular tracks, and I assumed it would be Last of the Mohicans because that's the one that stands out. It's got the the bum, 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 like that really famous score. Yeah. But all of the most popular tracks were for Dragonheart. So I'm like, maybe it's a film that everybody loves and I'm not paying attention to. Or the fact that Anaconda wasn't on the list. Jesus Christ, who doesn't have the soundtrack or score to Anaconda? But yeah, that's pretty much it for the soundtrack. In terms of legacy, well, you've already mentioned that, I think this does have a lot to answer for in terms of terrible family movies starring action stars. Yeah. You think of, like, Tooth Fairy with The Rock. I think you mentioned The Pacifier with Vin Diesel, Stop All My Mum Will Shoot. And, you've got to put it into perspective. It's like, yeah, someone like The Rock, he does family films now. And it's not a big deal because nearly everything The Rock does is a family film. If you're looking for a modern day comparison. At the start
of his career, he wasn't really doing that. He was doing
he wasn't. But, like, you've got to think for Arnie to suddenly be in this role, it was a shock because, he wasn't just doing action movies. He wasn't, he was doing, what is it? Like, again, we mentioned it earlier, like these were 18 rated action films. These weren't just action films. These were like Commando, Running Man, Total Recall, Raw Deal. I don't know why I used Raw Deal as one of the examples of his films, but these are all R-rated action films. And then for him to suddenly do a family film, it did feel like a shift. And I just don't think you get that anymore in modern cinema. It's no surprise to see, oh, Rock's doing a family film. It's like, well, yeah, of course he's doing a fucking family film. He's done tons.
Yeah, but there's also, obviously, there's Kindergarten Cop 2 with Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
2016.
I know how you said that. Obviously, there's. I don't think. I think that is genuinely coming as a shock to 99% of the listeners of this podcast. They're like, wait a minute, there's Kindergarten Cop 2 with Dolph fucking Lundgren. Yes, there is.
Because it was 2016 as well, and you've got the premise of the big guy being a kindergarten teacher, but they kind of like, we switched on his head because it's like a tech savvy kindergarten. So you've got all the kids with their tablets and things like that. So hijinks ensue, should we say? But
yeah, well, it's one of those films. Like, I haven't seen it, and that's not going to change. You watch the trailer and you're like, I get it. Yeah. Like, I don't need to see anymore. It's clearly not very good, and I like Dolph Lundgren, but I don't need to see that film at all.
No. The other interesting legacy, which could lead us into the next section, is that part of the Astoria Elementary School from the film were used as reference for the location of Midwich Elementary School in the video game Silent Hill.
Yeah. That's one of the things I've done. Yeah,
which is really, I mean. If you go back and you see them side by side, it's interesting to see, because I love Silent Hill, the video game, anyway.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge, I wasn't aware of that part. So that's actually really, really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And I don't think it's one of those things you would, I don't think, I don't have Astoria kindergarten school or primary school, whatever you want to call it, like burned into my memory. Yeah. It's only, like you say, when somebody points it out, and you do visit Midwich Elementary pretty early in the game, and the steps are very much the same, and excuse me, more pressing, I suppose, the hallways look the same. Even the posters, I think someone pointed out the fact that there's a trophy cabinet in the film, and it's literally taken almost exactly into Silent Hill. And I don't think this is like Silent Hill's great homage to Kindergarten Cop. I think director Kiichiro Toyama even said, it's like, we couldn't travel to America, so we were taking influence from a lot of aspects of American culture. And, you go back and play the Silent Hill games, clearly they're influenced by David Lynch and Twin Peaks and stuff like that. But of course, you're playing a horror film. That doesn't come as a surprise. But they still needed, from a purely visual perspective, a high school. And it's like, a primary school. So why not make it the one from Kindergarten Cop? So I think it is more by chance than by design. But yeah, it's still a great shout that there's this bizarre link between Silent Hill, one of the most disturbing horror video games ever made, and Kindergarten Cop. It is a bizarre one for sure.
I'm really interested in that can lead us into the next section, and I am super interested in this because I am at a complete and utter loss. Tell me, Liam, how would you make Kindergarten Cop as a video game?
I've got a very distinct idea. So firstly, there is no video game for Kindergarten Cop, which might come as no surprise. If I was going to make one, it would actually be, it wouldn't be based exclusively on the film. It would be inspired by the film. So it'd still be John Kimball, but it'd be a different situation, a different take on the film. But it'd be split day and night, the video game. So in the day, I'm thinking like a kind of twisted visual novel style in, have you ever heard of Danganronpa or Danganronpa? It's a visual novel with mini games included by Spike Chunsoft, sorry.
And what's on your mind this morning?
Yeah, I know, right? Jesus Christ. So in the day, it's very much a visual novel where you're interacting with the kids, you're interacting with the teachers, but a big part of the challenge is keeping the kids entertained. So that is via an array of mini games where you don't necessarily have to win them, because the whole plan is keeping the kids entertained in the classroom. So that is the whole plan, is not so much like, I've got to win this mini game. You've got to balance it so the kids, enough of the kids are doing well enough in these games so that one or two don't step away from it, as it were. So The day sections are a visual novel class management sim, if you were. I'm not sure if that's a real thing, but that's what I'm going for. But then by night, it's a violent first-person shooter in which you gun down the criminal underworld of Astoria, developed by Sledgehammer Games, who do Call of Duty. So yeah, it's a clear mix between day and night. Danganronpa in the day, Sledgehammer Games, Call of Duty by night. I think that's the only way to go. That's Kindergarten Cop the video game, as far as I'm concerned.
I'll go with you on that one, as I have for a few weeks now, because I couldn't think of how you would do.
I mean, in fairness, Call of Duty, everyone's heard of Call of Duty. I'll admit, Danganronpa, is a bit of a deep cut, but that is the lens I had to go to make a Kindergarten Cop video game work in 2021. So there we have it.
Cool. Let's rate this bad boy then, and let's see if we recommend it to others. So you go first.
I think this is a 4-star film. I think it's really, really good. I think it totally holds up, and I have been actively telling my friends to rewatch it. I wouldn't have said that before going back and rewatching it for this podcast, but I really enjoyed it. I think it's worth watching for Arnie alone, let alone the other aspects of the film, which I think work really well. So yeah, 4-star film. Totally encourage other people to watch it. Totally recommend it.
Cool. I would totally recommend it as well. It's a great watch. It's good to see, and it's heartwarming. Aside from the random handcuffing somebody to a dead body and then the dark ending, the rest of it's pretty heartwarming. So it's it's interesting to watch. It's a 3-star for me. Mainly let down. I get it. It's mainly let down by Crispin. I'm not a huge fan of him as the bad guy. I don't feel the threatening from him. I just feel like he's a mama's boy. Like there's no story of why they're drug dealers or how they're doing it. He's meant to be this really evil guy, and I just don't feel that with him. So it's let down by him. So it's a 3-star for me.
Yeah, this is actually one of the few films where I was talking to my wife about it in terms of how we'd rate it. I was like, man, this feels like a 3.5. It totally feels like a 3.5. I was like, I can't give it 3 because Arnie's so good in it, and I find it so charming. But I was like, oh man, 4 feels pretty high. Yeah, I do have the same issues with it. I have the same grievances. I don't like Crisp in it. The ending feels a little bit jarring, kind of thing. But yeah, I'm gonna go with 4. Because I don't want to say 3.5, but it kind of feels like 3.5 to me, which is the first time I've said that.
You heard it here first. Liam is coming around to Rob's way of scoring.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. Maybe so.
So before we wrap up and we move on to next week's film, there is something that we want to cover. And actually, we want to give a shout out to our friends in Australia at Side Boob Cinema.
We should have done this at the top, shouldn't we?
We should have, but we'll stick it to it now. So that's no problem. Yeah. So please give a listen to Side Boob Cinema. They cover a lot of films. They cover films different to how we cover them. Their latest episode, Big Trouble in Little China, or their previous episode, Roadhouse, really good listens. Mm-hmm. And please listen out as well, because we have some interesting things coming with them partnering up in the future, and we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it should be good. We had a chat with those guys. I guess they're officially friends of the show now. Yeah. But they are like us. If you like this podcast, you probably like theirs. It's kind of like ours, but more professional and a lot more Australian. So it sounds quite exotic. But I'm not just saying that because we are planning on kind of joining them for some like joint podcasts in the future, which I think will be like super fun. But they are like-minded individuals. There's a reason that we're doing a crossover podcast with those guys. It's not like we've picked each other out of a hat. We've listened to their podcast, they've listened to ours. They're very much on the same page. So yeah, if you want to hear a more professional, more Australian version of our podcast, do try out Side Boob Cinema. And perhaps we'll give them another shout out next week at the start of the show. The reason is we're recording this first thing on a Sunday morning. We can't be expected to remember anything, So I think you've done well to remember it for the end of the show. But yeah. So give them a listen. But yeah, dude. So what are we doing next week?
So we've always said that this is mainly an 80s podcast because that's the films that we grew up watching. But we've delved into the 90s a couple of times as of today as well. We've done We've done Groundhog Day and we've done Tremors. Now, usually we would go back to the 80s after we touched, so we can touch base with the films that we say this podcast is about. But I caught it in my DVD library a couple of days ago, and I really want to watch it again. And it's a film I grew up loving. And I think I was 11 when this film first came out and when I watched it, which I probably shouldn't have at 11. This is a long build-up to say that next week we will be covering The Crow. Brandon Lee's The Crow.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really good one because this is another one of those films I watched quite a bit when I was younger, but I have not seen for a long, long time. And because my wife's such a big fan, I suspect it might have something to do with the fact that Brandon Lee was like a bit of a pin-up for a few. I mean, obviously he tragically died on the set, but that kind of like goth hotness thing he had going on became kind of the benchmark for goth hotness for like the next 20, 30 years. And we've got like a really cool poster like framed in the hallway. So, you know, it feels like I should know this film better. So I'm totally looking forward to like rewatching this film.
And you're talking to a guy who owns all 4 sequels and the TV show and the book.
Well, you can definitely cover the legacy section next week because I am not watching the goddamn Edward Furlong starring sequels or any of that nonsense. That's all I know is Edward Furlong's definitely the Crow in one of them. But
Edward Furlong in The Crow Wicked Prey, who teams up to fight David Boreanaz, who is a reincarnation of Lucifer. Just FYI.
How could you not want to join next week? How could you not want to? So yeah, please join us for The Crow next week. And as always, thanks for listening in to this very long, very mixed up podcast where we have covered an array of films. But it's been fun as always, dude. So as always, thanks for listening, guys. And and before I forget, because I always forget, here's Rob telling you where you can actually find us.
Yeah, so we're currently on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under Hey You Guys 80s or at Hey You Guys 80s. And we're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any emails, any recommendations, or any reviews you have. But whilst we're on about that, wherever you get your podcasts, please also smash the subscribe button. Yes, I said smash.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Leave us a review. And leave us some 5-star ratings as well. But make sure they're 5-star ratings.
Yeah. We're not interested in 1-star, 5-star. If it's not going to be 5-star, don't go smashing anything. Just leave your opinion to yourself. 5-star ratings only. But yeah, if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you next week.